Hey everyone, I'm Liz Fairy and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I made these crocheted holiday cookies. I made a gingerbread man, a Christmas tree, and a snowflake cookie. In this part, I'll be making the Christmas tree cookie. Some things you'll need for this tutorial are a crochet hook, I used a size E, a pair of scissors, some stitch markers or bobby pins, a yarn needle, some sewing pins, and some yarn. I used warm brown from Red Heart Super Saver for the cookie. I used spring green, also from Red Heart, for the tree. And to decorate the tree, I used some yarn scraps in Patty Green, Cherry Red, Bright Yellow, Soft White, and Blue, all from Red Heart Super Saver. All these scraps were split apart to make them a little thinner, so if you want, you could also use crochet thread or embroidery floss instead. You can also find a pattern for these projects in my Ravelry store at the link in the description below. Using my green yarn, I'm going to begin by creating a slip knot. Then I'll chain 1 for the foundation chain, and chain 2 more to count as the first stitch of the row. So I'll mark that chain with a bobby pin. Now into the third chain from the hook, I'm going to double crochet 2 times. Now I'm going to chain 2 to count as the first stitch of the next row. So I'll mark that stitch with another bobby pin. Then I'm going to turn the work and double crochet into the third chain from the hook to increase the first stitch. And then I'll double crochet into the next 2 stitches of the row. Now in the next row, I'm going to create a picot at the beginning and the end of the row. So instead of chaining 2 for the first stitch, I'm going to chain 4, turn the work, and slip stitch into the third chain from the hook. And then I'm going to mark that stitch as the first stitch of the row. Now I'm going to double crochet again into the same stitch that I chained up from to increase the first stitch. And then double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. Now I'll create a picot on this stitch. I'm going to chain 2, turn the work, and slip stitch into the third chain from the hook. And here's what we have so far. Now to begin the next row, I'm going to chain 2, mark that stitch as the first stitch of the row, and then I'm going to increase that stitch by double crocheting again into the same stitch that I chained up from. Now I'll double crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. In the next row, I'm going to do another picot row. So instead of chaining 2 to begin the row, I'm going to chain 4, turn the work, and slip stitch into the third chain from the hook. And then I'll mark that stitch as the first stitch of the row. Now increase that stitch by double crocheting again into the same stitch that I chained up from, and then double crochet into each of the next 5 stitches. And next create the picot by chaining 2, turn the work and slip stitch into the 3rd chain from the hook. Now I'm going to chain 2 to count as the 1st stitch of the next row. Mark that chain with my bobby pin, and then increase the stitch by double crocheting again into the same stitch that I chained up from. And now double crochet into the next 6 stitches. Now the next row is going to be another picot row, so I'm going to chain 4 to begin the row, turn the work and slip stitch into the 3rd chain from the hook, mark that stitch as the 1st stitch of the row, and then double crochet into the same stitch that I chained up from to increase the 1st stitch. Now I'm going to double crochet into each of the next 7 stitches, and now I'll create a picot on the other side by chaining 2, turn the work and then slip stitch into the 3rd chain from the hook. Now I'm going to slip stitch into the next 2 stitches, but after the 2nd slip stitch I'm going to change colors to my brown yarn. So I'm going to slip stitch into the next stitch, then I'll change colors after the 2nd slip stitch. So I'll pull up a loop of my brown yarn and slip stitch, now I'm going to finish the tree using my brown yarn. So I'm going to chain 2 to count as the 1st stitch, then I'll mark that stitch with my bobby pin as the 1st stitch of the row, and now I'm going to double crochet into the next 3 stitches. And now in the next row, I'm going to make a row of single crochets. So I'm going to chain 1 to count as the 1st stitch. I'll mark that stitch with my bobby pin as the 1st stitch of the row, turn the work, and then I'll single crochet into the 3rd chain from the hook and into the next 2 stitches. Now I'll chain 1 to fasten off the yarn, and I'm going to cut off a long tail of the yarn, and now I'm going to make one more, this time just using the brown yarn. Now I've made another one using just the brown yarn, so I'm going to decorate the top, and then I'm going to sew the 2 layers together, just like I did with the gingerbread man cookie. Before I do that, I'm going to thread the long tail of brown yarn that I cut onto my yarn needle. I'm going to work the yarn over to the green stitches, and then I'm going to create a row of chain stitches all the way around the green part. You could do this creating a row of slip stitches around, but I find that it's a little bit more crisp to do this with a needle and thread. So I'm just going to once again use that lazy daisy chain stitch and create a line of chains all the way around the shape. And this is going to give me a nice clean edge when I sew the 2 sides together. Alright, I've finished adding my row of chain stitches all around the edge. Now I'm going to use some of the split apart white yarn, and I'm going to create a zigzag line going across all the way down the tree. Now that I've finished my zigzag line, I'm going to wrap the yarn around the zigzag line all the way from the bottom to the top to thicken that line. Okay, now I've finished with my zigzag line. Now I'm just going to sew the rest of this end in. Now that I've done with the little line of icing all along the tree, I'm going to add some Noels to the tree using several different colors of my yarn. So I'm going to create my Noels using French knots. Now to create a French knot, I've brought my yarn out at the spot where I want the Noel to go. Now I'm just going to wrap the yarn around the tip of my needle 2 times. And then put the needle to the back, slightly to one side of where I started the knot. So not into the same place, but slightly to one side. Then I'm going to hold down this end of the yarn, and I'm going to pull through the rest of my yarn. So I've finished adding all of my French knots of different colors to my tree. Now I'm going to sew both sides of my trees together. So I'm going to line them up and pin them together. And now I'm going to sew both sides together using a blanket stitch. And when I get to the green part, I'm going to make sure that I place my stitches around the chain stitches that I made in brown around the green part, so that I keep that clean line of stitching around the green part. And now the Christmas tree cookie is done. I think these came out super cute. Let me know which one was your favorite in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, press the like button and share it on social media. If you want to support the channel, you can donate to my Patreon at patreon.com/fairyrings. You can find a link to my Patreon in the video description, or you can leave a super thanks on the video right here on YouTube. You can also follow me or tag me to show me what you're working on Instagram at LizFairy. In my next video, I'll show you how I made the snowflake cookie, so be sure that you subscribe to my channel and click the bell to receive notifications every time I post a new video. I think these cookies would work really well as tree ornaments, along with my peppermint holiday candies that I made last week. I also recently got a bunch of pinbacks for another project, and I have toyed with the idea of using one of these to make a holiday brooch. Any thoughts on how else I could use these holiday cookies? Let me know your suggestions down in the comments section, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!